So back in college, they used to call me old Backdoor Daniel, and that's totally because of jazz chords. So today we're talking about what a backdoor chord is, and just among a bigger picture, we're going to talk about just how you can just use different chords in a chord progression, take stuff from outside a chord progression, and we're just going to get right to it, okay? So, simplest answer of what a backdoor chord is basically the flat 7 as a 7 chord, alright? So, first of all, we're going to start by doing this in the key of A, the prettiest key of all time. I'm actually shooting these videos from the road, and I want to shout out Supro because they have supplied me with an amp that has a line out, so I can kind of like make these videos and do electric guitar stuff without having like a crazy amount of volume, right? Because again, the thing about backdoor is you gotta keep your volume quiet if you're using that back door. Know what I'm saying? So let's just talk about the chords in the key of A, right? A major. Right here, we got 7 different chords, 7 different notes in the key. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. We number those, they turn into chords, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. Every single one of those notes becomes its own chord. So the 1, 4, and 5 are all major chords. So A major is the 1 chord, D major is the 2 chord, E major is the 3 chord. The 2, 3, and 6 chords are minor. So B minor is the 2 chord, C sharp minor is the 3 chord, F sharp minor is the 6 chord, and then that 7th note is like diminished, half diminished, so that'd be G sharp diminished, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Those are all the chords in the key of A. All of this stuff is movable. If you want to do it in G, we'll go to the people's key by the end of the video, but so G would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Alright, so you have to understand those numbers before you even start talking about backdoor dominance. Alright, now a traditional chord progression is always going to end up with some resolution, which all that means is it ends on the 1 chord, traditionally. Again, I think a lot of what I want to talk about in this video is to kind of use these in non-traditional ways, but you kind of have to learn the traditional ways to learn the non-traditional ways and how to break them, right? So if we just had a regular chord progression in the key of A, we could just be like A, D, E, and then you end on A. You can jazz it up a little bit by using 7th chords, so like A major 7, D major 7, and then E7 to A. So it's going to resolve on the 1 chord, okay? But one thing that I never really liked the sound of the 5 chord as a dominant 7 chord, right? Every time you're in the key of A, some joker's going to play E7, and then back to A, right? That sounds too traditional, and I'm a man on the cutting edge, you know what I'm saying? So anytime you see this open E7, and you want it to go to A, it's like, I don't know, it just seems kind of lame, and I'm sorry for all those E7 truthers out there, but it's just lame, right? Introduce the backdoor. Man, that's so loaded. But anyways, so the flat 7 note in any key is going to be 2 notes behind the root, okay? So you can go forward or backward. It's easier to go backward, right? We're about the back door here, so we'll go forward just for the people who like to keep it on the straight and narrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A flat 7 is going to take that G sharp into a G, alright? So G is not in this key. It's not in the diatonic, so to speak, notes and chords that populate the A major chord, but it still has a really good use, and if you turn that into a dominant 7 chord, right? There's the G, turn it into a dominant 7 chord. The notes in here, that G is not in the key, but it's a more elegant way, I think it's more elegant, to get back home. That's why it's called the backdoor, because you're still getting home, but you're doing it from behind, right? Sliding right into that A major chord, 1 chord. So, I think the most common harmonic movement that you'll hear, even outside of jazz, again, jazz people always talk about 2-5-1s, right? So a 2-5-1 in the key of A would be A, 2, B, be a B minor, to an E7, back home to A, right? 2, 5, 1. So I want you to listen to this, all right? 2, 5, 1 versus a 4, flat 7, 1. Is it 2, 5, 1? As compared to the 4. Right? Now, they sound pretty similar. They can kind of have the same job, the same utility as far as how you want to maybe pick chords and move them around. But, again, that 4, flat 7, it's just a little more spice, especially when you go higher, like that. Now I'm turning them into major 7 chords, dominant 7, major 7 right there. Okay, so here's the D, major 7, G, 7, A. You gotta remember, that note is not in the key, but it just works. It just works out so perfect. I think it sounds really good too if you maybe slide it up the neck like that. Right? Because now you have just different directions and stuff. The back door doesn't always have to be behind the house. You could use a window, a second story window if you're nasty. That's the gentleman's back door, as I like to put it. So many ways you can get into that house without the front door. Only noobs, only plebes use the 5-1 to get home. Real G's will find a way to get to that flat 7-7 chord, alright? So that's what I want you to think about. Usually when you talk about chords and you say stuff like, oh, this is going to be key of A, hit that flat 7-7 chord. It's like, what? What are you talking about? I used to remember before I learned music theory, I was like, what? Like that sounds dumb. A flat 7-7 chord? All that means is the flat 7 note in A, or the 7th note is G sharp. Flat 7 would be G. Make that flat 7 into a 7, a dominant 7 chord, and that sets you up back door. All right. And again, one of the reasons that a 4 to a flat 7 home works, like let's look at this real quick. So we've got D to G to A. Well, if we look at the relationship between D and G, right, and just how we talked about before, how a 2-5-1 is like the most common kind of jazz harmonic way to move home as the front door. Well, look, you might know these chords already, right? D to G. Where is that usually going to put you? I know you've seen these chords before. C, right? In the key of C, D is the 2. G is the 5, and C is the 1. So that's why, as a 4 to a flat 7 to a 1 has a familiarity. We've all had to go through the back door before, am I right? You know? In fact, I had a thing for a while where I just lost the key to my house when I was in high school, and every time I went home, I just climbed through the window rather than just taking the necessary steps and just getting another key. And let me tell you, it was not an easy window to get through, especially with like my backpack and like a bunch of books and like my basketball and like my shoes and stuff and gym bag. I was really just taking it through that back door to the next level. That's why they called me old backdoor Daniel, old backdoor SD, right? So let's talk about it in a different key. Let's go to the people's key of G, right? So now the notes are G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Alright, so let's take that F sharp, flatten it right off the bat. Now we have an F instead of an F sharp. Now again, you still use that F sharp to make the other chords in the key. So if we were to make these as 7th chords, the 1 chord would be G major 7, 2 chord is A minor 7, 3 chord is B minor 7, 4 chord is C major 7, 5 chord, that front door, D7, 6, E minor 7. The regular 7 is going to be F sharp, half diminished, but again, back door, F7 to G. So, if you want to get home through the window, G, C, F, G. Okay? So, again, 4, flat 7, 1, all works the same. Now, as far as breaking the rules, one thing that I like to do in my own kind of songwriting and composition stuff is treat that flat 7 not as a dominant 7 chord because that's still too basic. I'm not about that dominant life most of the time. I like making things pretty. If there's one thing about old SD, he makes that backdoor as pretty as it can possibly be. So let's turn it into a major 7 chord. And I think doing it in the key of G is a great way to look at this too, because like I said right here, that 7th note that usually we don't use in, you know, alternative music is a, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's the diatonic chord. This would be an F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Well, if we just flatten just the 7, see, right here, if we take the rest of the harmony that is already there, but we just change the root, then we end up with an F major 7. So to me, I think it almost makes more sense to have the pretty, the dressed up backdoor as a major 7 chord that'll lead you back home to major 7, right? So let's do something, let's just pick some random numbers. Let's do like a 3, 4, flat 7, major 7, back to home 1, right? So 3 would be 4, flat 7, 1, 3, 4. Right, and I think all that stuff sounds really good, you know? I think, one thing that I remember when I was teaching myself this, just like on internet stuff, is they would talk about chord harmony and movement in very, very black and white terms, right? Like, oh, if you want to get home from a backdoor, you know, it's got to be like a 4, and then maybe you go to the flat 7, 7, but make it a flat 7, 7 sharp 11, because then you have like the leading tone from the major 3rd and the root note, and it's like, okay, I guess, but then it just sounds like the example that you're providing, and the creativity wasn't really there for me. So I think it's just a great way to see a root note as a full step 2 frets below your tonic, your home chord, and then just introduce that as an entirely new way to play chords, right? So let's say you want to just make a song, and you want to use 4 major chords instead of the 3 that you're given, right? So let's go back to the key of A. And I'd be like, all right, well, I know that A major, D major, and E major are my 1, 4, 5. Let's go one step beyond. Let's take that flat 7. So now my chords are going to be G major, A major, D major, and E. And let's make them all major 7 chords. Right? And even then, just using 5 as a major 7 is also not diatonic. I would say that that's also kind of like a backdoor, but again, it's not traditionally. But if there's anything about this channel specifically, is we're breaking the rules, breaking all those backdoor rules. Anyway, as long as you get into the house, you've done a good job. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the whole point, is just to get into the house, get out of the cold, get into the house, whichever house it is, just a house. It doesn't have to be your house. Get in there and do it in whichever way you think is the most styling way to do it. So if you take one thing from this, do not be afraid when somebody says, oh, or when you see flat 7, 7, flat 7, 7 sharp 11. Just break it down and be like, all right, they're talking about a root note first, and then from that root note, just do whatever, right? I think, you know, if you just look up online, like, what's a backdoor dominant chord, you'll see this long explanation. Just take the note a step below your root and then just throw it in the mix, right? If you're in the key of C, B flat. And then you don't always have to do it before you go home too. Some of the best songs, like, there's so many great versions of this, like Wild Horses is a good example of just like using the flat 7, 7 major chord where they have that F that goes back to G. Dirty Work by Steely Dan, I think, is another one off the top of my head that I can just think of. Could be wrong about that, but I think that's another one that just uses a flat 7 major chord as what's up, and just has like it just has such a signature sound that is like it's not wrong, but it's not all the way right. And I think that kind of stuff will really lend itself to more interesting songwriting. All right. So yeah, anyways, thank you to Supro for checking out the amp. I'll have an affiliate link in the description if you want to check it out. Also rocking the Mini DC that I'm borrowing from my buddy Cody. I have the exact same one of these at home that I love, except I took the pick guard off, so it might look familiar to you guys watching at home. But yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.